Welcome to the Gruber Morning Show. This is our weekly EV podcast. I'm Pete Gruber.
I'm Mark Schaffner. Good morning, everybody. Welcome.
Yeah. So we want to lead with full self-driving. That's the image behind us here. And I'm sure it's an AI-generated image. It's just one that we didn't do, but it looks very AI to me.
Yeah, it definitely looks very AI. Full self-driving is an exciting and scary technology to a lot of people, but it's so interesting to see the leaps and bounds that it's taking.
Definitely. And this week, apparently, Elon had some more things to say about full self-driving, and we thought we'd share those with you. He said, most people still have no idea how crushingly good Tesla full self-driving will get. So he's still reserving a bit of development here, it looks like. He said it will be superhuman to such a degree that it will seem strange in the future that humans drove cars, even while exhausted and drunk and stoned, I would say. Yeah.
Yes, and stoned.
These days you drive along, and at least in Phoenix, you get the whiff of weed being smoked while people are driving.
Yeah.
The windows down next to you. And, of course, driving has become a risky sport anymore. Sunday, my wife and I almost had a near miss. A guy ran a stop sign. He saw us there. It was like a T intersection. But he's to the right. We're sitting there ready to take a right, and he just barrels right through that thing, But anyway, so, full self-driving, it will seem strange to future generations that at some point in history, they actually let humans behind the wheel with a 5,000-pound missile,
Yes.
They say cars will take you where you want automatically, just like getting on an elevator and pressing a button, and something that used to be manual. For those of you from my generation, when you got onto an elevator, there was a guy inside there, and it was usually a male.
Sure.
And he had a large handle, and when you got in, he would close the door. It was some of those, triangular type shaped screen mesh doors. And then he would turn that handle either forward or backward. And the skill was catching the lip just right so you didn't have any kind of a imbalance there. And later on, they actually automated that portion to a degree. So all he had to do was push forward and then come back, and it would go to the next floor automatically.
But they didn't trust people in the elevator to just operate it or push a button. They always had an elevator operator.
Much to my chagrin, because I would love to have controlled that thing,
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, it will seem strange to future generations that we were allowed to do things like this. They say that this statement shows Elon Musk's confidence that Tesla full self-driving will be the mechanism that makes cars driverless and function just like elevators do today, constantly working most of the time without any intervention. I've got a few questions here, or people chiming in. Actually, just one. YouTube, Ethan Easler says, hey guys, I can't wait for full self-driving to get great. I know that it still has some errors, but it's made insane progress overall. Is this a good time to insert that video there, Jesse, that you were talking about?
Yeah, give me one sec.
Yeah, Ethan, I have to agree with you there. It's made truly it is insane progress that it's made so far.
And Jesse's going to bring up a video. This apparently was just released within the last couple of days, and it shows...
This was released in the last couple hours.
Last couple hours. Oh, wow. Okay. Breaking news, folks. And apparently we're going to see someone actually using full self-driving, and in this case, it looks like FSD may not be all it's cut out to be.
Okay, so in the upper part, you clearly see it's just driving over the yellow there. I don't know if you guys are...
Yeah.
We'll restart it here. So right here is where I was talking about the truck is blocking the turn barely.
Right.
So it just cuts right around him to go follow this car in front of it.
Now, of course, if full self-driving is no longer following the rules of code and it is mimicking human behavior, this isn't that uncommon, is it?
That's exactly what I'm thinking as well. There's a lot of humans that'll do exactly what it's doing right here. It's not like it's going into oncoming traffic. It's just...
Yeah, this isn't a Dan O'Dowd video.
Right, we have to qualify that, yes. No mannequins in the foreground there. So they say, how much better will full self-driving be than a human? Well, the FSD technology apparently is not just about matching human driving capabilities. It's about surpassing them. I would hope so.
Sure.
Yeah.
I would hope so as well.
Yeah. The foundation, they say, of this superiority lies in the system's ability to process and react to vast amounts of data with unparalleled speed and accuracy. Unlike human drivers, they say, Tesla's full self-driving isn't prone to distractions, fatigue, or impaired judgment. It continuously analyzes data from an array of cameras to make split-second decisions, ensuring optimal safety and efficiency. The system's proficiency, they say, comes from its advanced machine learning algorithms, which enable it to learn from vast data sets and different driving scenarios. The constant learning allows FSD to navigate the complex urban environments, handle intricate traffic patterns, and anticipate potential hazards with a degree, now this is important, with a degree of precision and foresight unattainable by human drivers. Even if they aren't impaired, I think is what they're saying here. Yeah.
I think so. I think so.
So they say, what does Elon mean when he says full self-driving will be superhuman? Well, when he speaks of it becoming superhuman, he envisions a system that not only matches but significantly exceeds the capabilities of even the best human drivers. So look out, Formula One drivers. There's your days may be numbered.
Now, wouldn't that be something to see full self-driving on display at a NASCAR event or a Formula One event?
It would, and it's coming. We know it's coming.
Be.
Yeah.
It's going to be coming.
So much more data available to the machines, even GPS, which, we can't decode with our brains.
So who wins the Formula One? Is it Michael Andretti or is it Waymo?
Right. And then once it's just AI, what are we going to do? Deify some of the race car AI drivers?
I don't know.
Well,
That's
we're humans.
a good question.
Most likely. And place bets on them,
Yeah.
Yeah, have to. All right. So Superhuman, they say that it achieves levels of reliability and safety that humans could never consistently maintain, instant reaction times, and flawless decision-making in emergencies. And the final benefit here from full self-driving is going to be that it will contribute to reducing traffic congestion and improving overall traffic flow, thanks to optimized routing and coordinated vehicle behavior. And of course, we have to throw in accidents. Accidents are a human condition.
That they are. That's first. I wanted to take and just recap really briefly what the levels of automation are for self-driving, because every once in a while I like the refresher, and I feel like it's useful as part of the conversation. Level 0 is no automation. That's what we have today. Human control at all times. It's what we're used to.
Right.
Level 1 is driver assistance. Driver assistance, not necessarily standard cruise control, but maybe adaptive cruise control, the more advanced cruise control systems. Partial automation, which is level 2, that's Tesla's autopilot, or the super cruise that high-end GM vehicles and Cadillac vehicles have. Conditional automation is where, under the right circumstances, the car can drive itself, but it needs human oversight. That's kind of where full self-driving is right now. That you can do anything, but you have to have a human there. You have to have oversight. It's going to get into trouble sometimes.
Right.
Level 4 is considered high automation, where the car can drive itself, but typically there's some sort of restriction, such as geofencing. I think of Waymo.
Right.
The Uber, the driverless Uber taxis that we had for a while in Phoenix, or Waymo, or two of those. And then level 5, it's the full automation. The car does everything for you. That's what full self-driving wants to get to. Very difficult to get to. There's one area that I'd really like to learn more about. I have that IT background. I'm a computer programmer, and it's not that 95 to 99% of what I think of that makes my programs good or bad. It's that 1% of less of cases that make my programs stable and robust or not. And it's not when people do what they're supposed to do. It's when people do what they're not supposed to do that my program gets tested. Well, same thing here on self-driving. I'm thinking I'm coming into work today, and the freeway is slow. It's stop and go, almost like a parking lot. And I go up get up a couple miles, and eventually I see there's this Yukon sitting sideways on the side of the freeway, with half of its front end torn completely off. So some sort of terrible accident. Well, if full self-driving was turned on my car, and that car was next to me or just in front of me and in the process of having that accident, how is my car going to react?
Good point. Yes. Yeah.
There's so little data about when accidents occur. How good is full self-driving? I don't think we're going to know until we find out in real world. How good is it at avoiding accidents? How good is it at avoiding the drunk driver that decides he's going to go the wrong way down the freeway?
And the machines will learn, and during that learning period, there may be accidents.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and that's where I think full self-driving is at the point of where it's going to need to go. They're getting to where they've got almost all of the expected behaviors, and they probably have some unexpected, but now we need to get some of these crazy behaviors out of the way too.
Right. Good point. YouTube, it looks like Niels is joining us. He says, if full self-driving worked perfectly, it won't, in parentheses. What do you think the take will be at $12,000? How many people are going to buy that, in other words, at 12 grand?
Boy, I know that the take right now is about 5 to 7%. And that's why when we were talking about it last week, Elon has told his delivery people, turn it on and demonstrate it for everybody as part of the delivery process. He's hoping to increase that take to 10 to 15%. But that's a legit question. That's a lot of money.
It is, yeah. And you also wonder, at what point in time will this no longer be optional?
Yeah,
it'll be mandatory. They aren't going to allow people to drive anymore. And then, of course, it becomes a cost as a part of the car. It's no longer a separate item that is optional or selectable.
Well, and at that point, we might take a look at, if every car owner had to pay a $25 a month subscription fee, how much money does Tesla or whichever car maker get for their full self-driving technology?
They can do that now, by the way, too. You could do it as a subscription. You don't have to do the outright cost.
That's true. Isn't it like $100 or something like that right now, Jesse?
No, that's if you don't have autopilot. If you already have a Tesla with autopilot, it's only $100 to upgrade. So if you have a completely base model with no autopilot, then it's $199. If you have autopilot, it's $99 to add on FSD.
I see.
Okay, but that's $99 a month in perpetuity.
Yeah.
So if 10% of your drivers are paying $100 a month, then maybe 100% of your drivers are paying $10 a month, and it just becomes part of it. How many people at $10 a month or at $20 a month would do full self-driving? There might be a lot.
TikTok, Alex chimes in. He says, I want a Tesla. A lot of people want a Tesla.
Yes, Alex.
Richard Flentke joined us. Richard, look what I have here.
Good time to bring that up.
Yeah.
Just dump some stuff out of it.
He says, I interviewed a full self-driving driver. He commented he used it to drive him to work, a repeatable loop. And after 5 or 6 runs, he stated he had full confidence in it running from his work loop, the repeatable loop key. Interesting feedback. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of that. Yeah, some things fell out of the book here. By the way, thank you, Richard, for sending both Mark and I autographed copies of the book. Yes. And it is called Verities of an Electric Mule. For those of you that like EV history, this is definitely a good read. It goes all the way back to Jack Ricard's days. And Richard was actually a co-host with him. He was one of the godfathers of social media EV and just EV technology in general. And I have scanned a little bit of it so far, Richard. There's some interesting stories in here, a good sense of humor in here as well. And this can be purchased on Amazon. Is that right?
That's right. I looked it up on Amazon, Verities of an Electric Mule. I saw it on Amazon, and once we've read it, I'm sure that we'll be giving you some Amazon reviews as well.
We will, yes. All right, YouTube, Niels is saying, are we confusing collision protection with full self-driving? Mandatory? Never.
I'm not confusing it. I don't know that the government will ever mandate full self-driving, but I could see an automaker saying, if you're going to buy our car, it's going to have this feature.
Yeah. Well, I'm also headed in a direction and a believer that there are certain skills that human beings are going to lose as we go through the generations. Many of them have already been lost. So driving, it just seems to me is one of them. And of course, moving from one spot to another, and let's qualify it, on this planet, there will be other planets, of course, is changing rapidly as well. We've got vertical takeoff and landing. The skies are now being considered for transport and for average individual transport, not Boeing with their commuter planes or with their large commercial jetliners. So again, I feel far more trusting of AI and a machine doing my flying, which already does, by the way. Autopilot is definitely an AI function. Rather than humans that come with a variety of issues, from fatigue, for example, and a whole host of other impairment type physical issues that could be involved.
Well, everything from, like we were talking about and joking about earlier, high on various things, alcohol, marijuana, other drugs. Distracted is as bad as being high, completely asleep or almost asleep because they're exhausted. They're just not sharp. And
we are such fragile, vulnerable creatures, even from an emotional standpoint. A fight with a girlfriend, for example, might send somebody towards suicidal tendencies and a complete disregard for other people on the road, that type of thing. So, and how many times have you been on a long trip with a family? And, you're the designated driver because nobody else really wants to drive that long and that hard. And I catch myself, after hours just sitting there saying, I got to keep my eyelids open. I've got a family in the car,
Yeah.
And there's definitely a level of impairment there.
There definitely is that sleepy driving. I've done that before too.
Yeah.
If not for my father-in-law at the time, talking me through it and nudging me and keeping me awake, it was, it was one of those touch and go things.
So my confidence, I'm still placing my bets on the machines at this point, and looks to be an exciting future to me.
And Pete?
Yeah.
Sorry, Mark, were you going to go ahead?
Go ahead first. I'll hold my thought.
I was thinking of iRobot. You guys remember that movie with Will Smith?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Where in that one, he takes over control from the automated car at one point, where it's going like, I don't know, 120 or 150 miles an hour or something. I could see that being a future too, where maybe for local neighborhood driving, we can still do our own thing. But as soon as you get on a highway, imagine the steering wheel receding in to the dash, and then all of a sudden, all of the vehicles are able to go 100 miles an hour or 120 miles an hour, whatever it is, comfortably, where they're all in such perfect sync that there are no accidents. It's just all automated. Now, people might say that could be hacked, or there's still downsides to that, but it would be able to operate at a much higher level, more efficient, faster travel times,
Safer.
Yeah, a lot safer. So yeah.
And we already have that. We have bullet trains, for example. Although they're humans sitting behind the wheel somewhere, the actual driving and the calculations are done by machines.
Well, and lest we forget, we are undergoing a cultural change.
Mm-hmm.
I go back one generation behind me. My kids were not as anxious to get driver's licenses as I was.
Yeah, isn't that strange? I find that too.
And now you go, they're at an age now where there's about a half a generation behind them. And my understanding is that it's getting more pronounced over time, that the idea of a driver's license as a rite of passage is not really there like it used to be.
Yeah.
And going and calling an Uber or a Lyft or something like that is much more popular than it ever was.
I think Cass is reacting to this. Do you have something to add there, Cass?
Yeah, I never wanted my license. My dad actually forced me to get my license, and then my sister also didn't want her license. We don't like driving at all.
Really?
I don't like driving because of the way other people drive.
Yeah.
Sure.
I always drive defensively, very defensively, especially when I'm riding my bike. I make it seem that nobody knows that I exist and that I have to sit and watch everybody.
Yeah. Interesting. Well, for me, it was a sense of freedom. We never had a car when I was growing up. Grew up fairly poor. We didn't have a lot of things, right? So for me, it was a broadening of the world. But if you live in a family where they have a vehicle, then I could see where that could become optional. But the first time I got my car, boy, I was out exploring, and I never looked back,
Yeah, I grew up in just a driving culture.
Yeah.
I still remember my first driving experience. I was 6.
Really? Yeah. Yeah.
And my dad asked me to take the car from the barn into the road and into the driveway. It's about 100 feet, and it only took me about 25 feet to put it into the ditch.
Right.
But I was hooked immediately. I'm like, wow, that was cool.
Yeah. Well, in the rural area that I lived for a brief time, kids are driving tractors and farm type equipment. And,
Yes.
they just weren't on the main roads, with other people. So
Yeah, and that's what we did. Within a year or two after that, I grew up in a very rural area. I was driving the tractor and plowing snow for neighbors, and I couldn't go more than about 10 miles an hour, but I learned everything I needed to for the car by the time I was 9 or 10 years old.
yeah, things are changing. It looks like YouTube. Mark Rataj says, I can see if I owned a robo-taxi, I can recoup the extra full self-driving fee. But if it is for my personal car, I can't see paying the fee. That is a lot of money, Mark. Yeah.
Yeah, I get that. I did get that. And then YouTube, Richard Flenke says, thank you.
Oh, you're more than welcome, Richard.
Very welcome.
Glad to have you. TikTok, Sean Galt, I'm doing to daily my 70s vet till I die. Okay, there you go.
There you go.
I hope I'm not around when the drivers are outlawed. Yeah, and the 70 vet is probably going to be outlawed at some point as well because it's an emission beast, and it may not be in this decade, but it's coming.
Yes, and he continues and says, yes, I bet they will. I bet they will outlaw it. YouTube, RC Robinson San says, full self-driving doesn't appeal to the death cult. Having said that, I have 12.3.3, and I can clearly see manual-driven vehicles being outlawed one day. He upvoted us. Thank you, RC.
Facebook, Sunny Moon, thanks for joining us. Great stuff. Thanks for sharing. Oh, you're more than welcome.
Welcome.
And Highlander joined us.
Hi,
Welcome.
Highlander.
He says, and many people don't know how to drive a stick shift. My first couple of vehicles were stick shift. Yeah, that's a dying art, isn't it?
It sure is. And, it's that to me was kind of a rite of passage as well. And learning how to drive a stick shift was something else.
That's one that I'm learning.
Yeah.
I want to learn how to drive stick
There you go. Yeah.
because of my dream car, which you both know
Yeah.
is the Mazda Miata.
That's
Mazda
right. And
Miata.
Yeah.
does it come as an automatic?
It can, but I want the 1990 years, which are only stick shift.
Okay.
Oh, gotcha.
I actually don't know how to drive a stick.
Really?
No one would teach me.
Ah.
So when I was younger, all my buddies had like sports cars and they didn't want me burning out their clutch.
Right.
And then the one time I had a chance to, I had shoulder surgery and I couldn't move the shifter in the Jeep Wrangler.
Yeah.
And then after that, I was like, I'm just going to stick with automatic.
I had a performance clutch put into my 69 Roadrunner. In fact, I put it in myself. And, it really takes a lot to depress that. I was playing soccer at the time and I broke my left knee.
Oh, no.
So my clutch days were temporarily put on hold, and there's no way I could have pressed that clutch with a healing knee, But the newer exotic cars, all those paddles, and I don't know, it's
I
not
don't
me.
like them.
Yeah.
I don't like them. Nothing wrong with your stick shift on the column. I had a Chevy Nova and it had a 3-speed on the column stick shift up here instead of down.
So we got an interesting news item here. You'll like this one. And the headline goes like this. Police caught up with a stolen Tesla after it ran out of battery during a car chase. So this apparently happened in Los Angeles, and it was a Fox 11 reporter by the name of Susan Hirasuna, who had parked her Tesla near a movie theater, United Theater in downtown Los Angeles. And she didn't discover the car was stolen until, of course, she came out of the theater. And the stolen car, however, and they didn't say if it was a Model S, Model 3, or whatever, but it really doesn't matter. It had a fairly low state of charge when it was stolen, like 15 miles. So there's probably a clue there. If you're going into a dangerous neighborhood and you don't want your car stolen, make sure that it's low on mileage because it'll be retrieved fairly quickly. But it turns out that the Los Angeles Police Department had already attempted to stop the car for reckless driving before it was even reported because she hadn't come out of the theater yet. And despite some equipment that the police department had for stopping cars during a chase, they figured, you know what, this thing has low mileage. Let's just follow it until it runs out. And sure enough, it did. So that was an easy chase.
It was an easy chase. I read it was amazing. I thought, well, this is interesting. Why don't I look up and see if there's any articles about this?
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh. There was like 40 articles about this over the last 6 days. It made international news and
Really?
All kinds of places. I mean, it's a car. It was out of fuel.
Mm-hmm.
That's all. Just that it was electricity that fuels it instead of gasoline.
And the other absurdity here is these cars have a tracking system.
Yeah.
You can see where they are, even on your cell phone. So it's like, you can tell the police exactly where they've stopped and then go retrieve the car.
In fact, she even, in one of the articles I read, she even was talking to LAPD after she realized her car was gone and said, look, I could shut this down. And they said, well, she said, it's almost out of charge though. And they said, well, don't worry about it because we don't want to have a dangerous situation if you shut the car down remotely.
Mm-hmm.
So that's true. With Teslas, you can shut down a car right on your app in an emergency situation.
We actually retrieved one of our lease cars in Atlanta, if you remember.
I do.
By locating it and finding out where it was parked in an underground parking by an apartment, and we sent the repo man to retrieve the car because the lessor was, unwilling to part with the car or even tell us where they were.
Yep, they didn't want us to know that they had taken the car out of state, and so in fact we did the same thing. We shut the car down, so that they couldn't take it. Although fortunately for us, they never found out that it had been shut down. We were able to retrieve it. Yeah,
these are computers on wheels these days, so that saying really does hit home.
Yeah, Ethan Easler on YouTube has joined us too, and he says most kids nowadays don't know how to drive. Ethan, I think I agree with you on that one.
Good point.
Says, I'm 16. I love driving. I have a stick and I love it. I'm also getting my pilot's license.
Good for you, Ethan. Yeah.
Congratulations, and keep up the good work on that pilot license.
And then Richard is talking to Highlander. He says, okay, Highlander, let's see what you know. Is it brake first, then clutch, or clutch first, then brake? Well, Highlander responds. He says it's clutch first and then brake.
That's right.
Otherwise, you stall your engine.
Yeah.
You can always tell back in the day when somebody was learning to drive because you would see an empty parking lot, like a grocery store parking lot on a Sunday morning, no cars around, and you'd see the car lurch and then jump and lurch, and you knew that somebody was learning how to drive a stick shift car.
Exactly.
That's me.
That was you.
That's me. When I'm learning my
stick.
when I'm learning the stick shift car, that's a lot of that. The same concept kind of for a bike, except for I don't have to physically like move the gear up and down with my hand. It's up and down with my foot, and I still stall from time to time, but I'm still learning.
Mm-hmm.
And it's honestly, Cass, it's almost exactly the same process. I've ridden a bike as well as driven a stick, and learning how to release that clutch, which is on with your hand instead of your foot. It's the same process.
Yeah, you have to find the friction zone.
Yeah. So Richard Flanke is continuing on the clutch discussion. He says, quick trick question. Driving slowly, clutch then brake when stopping. Driving faster, brake and then clutch down. And Richard, he's exactly right.
Yeah.
Because you're going to by if you're driving faster, you want to slow your car down a little bit first, and then you can put your clutch down.
And you want to listen to your engine too, so it helped if you had a leaky muffler or a performance type
It
type
did
exhaust
a lot.
system. Yeah, because your RPMs were now audible, and you learned to drive. My worst driving experience with a standard drive car or a standard shift car was one time we went to San Francisco, and I decided I want to get a Mustang, and I want to get a stick shift Mustang. I would not recommend that on the hills of San Francisco.
I would
You're
not.
you're in traffic. You're on an incline like this, and you don't know the car, and you're trying to feather that clutch, and
Oh,
yeah, that was a real experience.
the most fun I had in a clutch in a scary type of way, coming out of my house in Alaska, we would go up the hill to the highway. The highway is a hill coming down into town.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went up the hill, I hit the clutch, I hit the brake, and then I go to start. And so I let off the brake and hit the clutch, get it started. And the car just starts going backwards
Oh yeah, yeah,
because it's icy.
right.
And I'm like, okay, I'm stuck. And so I basically steer it backwards for about a block, and then I managed to slow it down without getting it into the ditch.
Boy, that ice breaks all the rules, doesn't it?
It sure does.
Yeah, you no longer have control.
YouTube, RC Robinson-san, about Cass, I think. She'll be a pin-to-drive Tesla person from now on. That's for sure.
YouTube Highlander to Richard, Pete. And I never get tired of talking about our 69 Roadrunners with the Hurst shifters. That's true. Yeah, there was one that sold on Bring a Trailer. Actually, it was black with a 6-pack hood. And wow, it was it had a blower in it. And it only went for like $78,000.
Wow.
But it had already been sold by the time I saw it, so it would have been interesting to bid on that. So we've got a story here about the Tesla Semi. The Tesla Semi is currently in low-volume production at Tesla's Gigafactory in Nevada. And they've delivered a small number of semis to customers, including PepsiCo and Walmart. However, they're still ramping up production of the Semi, and it's not yet clear when the truck will be available in large quantities. You were talking about a prediction that was made that kind of is conflicting with this information.
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, Fred Lambert on Electrek put out an article a couple weeks ago. March 14th is what I have. And he pointed out that Tesla's obviously had some significant challenges with their Semi. As recently as a year ago, or a little less than a year ago, Elon was saying that, yeah, Tesla will be putting, semis out in mass production by 2024. And he predicted that there would be 50,000 semis on the road by the end of 2024. That's not going to happen.
Yeah.
And, and it's pretty obvious by simply looking at what's going on. Tesla only broke ground on their expanded production facility in Nevada in January of this year. They don't have production capacity to build 50,000 trucks this year, plus the fact that they're still seem to be just working with Pepsi and working with Walmart and a few here and a few there. That speaks to the idea that they're having a harder time getting this to scale than they're letting on. And I think I agree with Fred here. The results speak for themselves.
I think another clue that we were tipped off to with the Cybertruck is when the Tesla service centers begin to install equipment able to handle the semi-truck.
Yes.
Because that happened just before the Cybertruck release.
That's right. And we're not hearing anything about equipment that's capable of handling the Tesla Semi yet.
Yeah. Now, of course, the range is about 500 miles on a single charge. It's also equipped with advanced safety features such as automatic emergency braking, lane departure warning, and blind spot monitoring. Tesla was really looking to revolutionize the trucking industry with this vehicle and replacing diesel trucks. It's also cheaper to operate, which could lead to, eventually for us, lower shipping costs to consumers. They do talk about Tesla, though, needs to build out a network of mega chargers to support the Semi. That's another clue, I think, is once they
think so.
start to make an investment in the charging infrastructure, at least large scale or scale that. And they're also going to, they feel, this article feels, they're going to have a challenge convincing trucking companies that the Semi is a viable alternative to diesel trucks. You know, one of the coolest videos I saw this week was there were 2 diesel trucks on a 3-lane highway going up a hill.
Mm-hmm.
And the Cybertruck just scooted right in between them and pulled away. And I'm sure that these diesel guys had their accelerator pedal floored trying to get up the hill.
Oh, sure. Yeah, the capabilities of the truck, I don't think are in question at all. It's the build out of the infrastructure. It's the build out of the service centers.
Mm-hmm.
Even the cost of the truck, I don't think is going to be a big deal because a higher end diesel big rig is going to set you back the same $150,000 to $250,000
Mm-hmm.
that the Tesla Semi is, because they're running
Yep.
at about $200,000 for one.
Yeah. Or I was going to say, or even more. I think the semi truck is definitely in that sweet spot. And then the maintenance, that's a whole nother benefit.
Oh, it will be.
Much reduced maintenance compared to the old diesel vehicles.
So getting the trust of the truck drivers is going to be a big thing. California, is trying to mandate this. So they're saying that over the next few years, all trucks that go into like the Port of Los Angeles or the Long Beach are going to end up having to be electric. We'll see how successful they can be with that, but there's the political push behind this as well.
Yeah. Richard says, on a side note, he was with EVTV, which did a lot of work and a lot of pioneering work in inverters and EVs and EV conversions. He says, on a side note, all of the EVTV builds were manual. We left it in third, never shifted or reversed, and electric motor adjusted torque, and a switch did reverse. Manual transmission made EV conversion simple.
Well, that's an interesting take.
Mm-hmm. It's like the Tesla Roadster. There is no transmission. It's just one gear, and it'll take you up to 130 miles an hour top speed.
Right. That's really is just an electric motor hooked up to a transaxle, right?
Right, exactly. And they originally tried a 2-speed transmission, but they were burning up clutch plates because of the incredible torque. So they dropped back to no transmission and a single gear.
Yeah.
Instagram, Ralph Jr. says, hi, guys, I enjoy your comments. Yeah, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
There's another company that just adopted the next standard, and it's probably one that you haven't heard a lot about. It's called Lightship, and it is a next-generation recreational vehicle startup founded by a Tesla alumni. And they've announced that the company would be adopting the next standard, or North American Charging Standard, for its products. And these will include its debut RV, which is the L1. It's expected to enter production sometime in late 2023. And just if you could bring up a picture of this, the picture that I thought I downloaded didn't take, but it's definitely a space-age looking recreational vehicle. The Airstream has its own distinctive design, all aluminum, kind of round, and looks like a big sausage, a bloated sausage. This thing definitely looks like something from outer space.
There's a lot of things that I have liked about the Lightship. We talked about this a few months back. The solar roof that can get you almost 6 kilowatts per hour of energy is just amazing. This Lightship, depending on the model of trailer that you get, they'll have in-wheel motors and its own battery system. So you could be pulling it with an EV and yet not lose any range because the Lightship will effectively be self-propelling. And so while it doesn't push you along per se, it will make it so that you don't lose range while you tow it. I love the idea. It's a beautiful trailer.
Yeah, we didn't investigate the price points, but this definitely looks like a improvement to the traditional type RVs that you see on the road. Look at the windows in this thing.
Yeah, it's. I think the prices were up in the low 6 figures, somewhere around the $100 to $120,000 for their L1.
Okay. All right.
So, and honestly, for a higher end RV trailer, that's not at all out of the realm of reasonableness too.
Cool. They said they have made the decision to go with the NAC system, and because they feel that's the way the industry is moving, it's also an efficient use of space, and it allows a high rate of charge at various chargers. Yeah, so any of the Tesla superchargers or the destination chargers that would be available for this. Fisker has definitely been in the news, and it's another one of those tragedies that replays itself from time to time when you get excited about a company that you think is going to change the world and then ends up not being able to make it. And the news is coming in steadily, but there's an interesting article here from one of the ex-employees who was with them from 2008 to 2013. And all we have is Stephen N. at this point. But he asks the question, he says, how many Fisker automotive mistakes were repeated by Fisker Inc.? And then he says, or insert any startup EV company name here.
Yeah.
Fairly common mistakes. He says Henry Ford went bankrupt 2 times before finding success. But he says, I don't think Fisker will get that many chances. As an early employee, 2008 to 2013, he saw some key lessons that were not learned by Fisker. And he goes into those. First of all, he says, brand trust betrayed with poor quality product. Fisker Karma was launched without completed durability testing, wrong quality, rushed to market, 150 engineering defects, counting on simulation tools to skip the prototype phase.
You know, the Ocean has had that same type of thing. It has the appearance of a product that's been rushed to market without adequate testing, and without adequate test driving. It seems like they just tried to rush it, and I don't know if you would call it arrogance, in corporate arrogance, or if you call it just negligence. But the idea that they can bring a car all the way to market without having it go through the proper test drive cycles.
Overconfidence is probably the best euphemism for that.
Very possible, yes.
2, mistake number 2, he says, letting the federal government subsidies dictate product strategy. The Department of Energy wouldn't approve a loan for Fisker Karma made in Finland. So the Fisker Atlantic was proposed with factory purchased in Delaware. Now, I don't know a lot of detail here, but it seems to me that if you have a mature manufacturing operation or concern, that would be your safest bet, rather than trying to create a new one to meet some sort of a federal, subsidy guideline.
Yeah, and it seemed like, Fisker had contracted with one of the more reputable manufacturing firms in Europe to be able to produce the Fisker Ocean. The surface take of that is like, wow, that's a really smart thing. Work with somebody who knows how to design and manufacture vehicles instead of trying to put a couple $1 billion into a factory and figure it out from scratch.
Exactly, yeah. Start the process from fresh. Number 3, he says, divided employees into 2 competing teams, one to engineer the Fisker Karma and one for the Fisker Atlantic. He says all resources should have been focused on the launch product, the Karma, with second-generation product a side project.
I'm wondering if when you talk about, Fisker Inc., we've got the Fisker Ocean, but they had announced 4 or 5 completely disparate models. If I remember, they had like the Alaska, which was their small pickup truck. The Ocean, of course, which was their SUV. And then they have the Fisker Pair, which is their subcompact car. Completely different market segments. Were they trying to work on everything at once?
Yeah, good point. Number 4, car fires. He says that's a real PR disaster. Under no circumstances should a car spontaneously catch on fire. I think we'd all applaud to that, right?
I think we would too.
He says bad validation and poor quality control.
Well, and that was the story there is was the Fisker Karma. There were Fisker Karmas that spontaneously caught fire due to a poor design, and that Fisker, and so that tanked their sales, and we'll come up to what happened as a result of those tank sales.
And that is number 5, underinsured in-process inventory. Apparently, there were 330 cars submerged in Hurricane Sandy in a New Jersey port. They were insured for 10 cents on the dollar and were unsold because the sales rate went from $300 a month to $50 a month after the first fire incident.
That's what we're talking about. So they took, when you don't adequately insure, you're taking unnecessary risk. And if you don't have the capital to get adequate insurance, it seems like an easy way to cut corners, as it were.
Right.
Yet when that bad risk happens, it becomes a disaster.
And yeah, you're right, Highlander. He says, I believe Fisker was using Magna, and you might want to double check that.
You are right, Highlander. Yeah. Fisker has been using Magna to build the Ocean.
In Europe. Then, number 6, he cites, cost of goods sold resulted in unprofitable sales. The original forecast missed expedited shipping costs, anywhere from $7,000 to $15,000 shipping bills per vehicle for early built cars to fly interiors from China and hand carry parts from the U.S. So it sounds like some serious supply chain miscalculations.
Yeah, supply chain miscalculations and likely just poor supply chain planning as well. Because holy cow, spending $15,000 on shipping to get something here in 3 days when you could have spent a tenth of that or less to get it here in 6 weeks. Is that 6 weeks that end up being that important? And that's a per car thing.
Yeah. Substantial increase in cost. Number 7, he cites unrealistic sales projections and volumes used to sell supplier partners and investors on the business opportunity, but which resulted in excess tooling expenses, stranded inventory, and clawbacks on piece costs when volumes didn't materialize. Well, it's perfectly normal. You go to a vendor and you say, I want to buy X number of parts, and they give you pricing based on the quantity that you've committed to.
Yeah.
If you decrease that amount, then they have what are called clawbacks, and the price goes up.
Yeah.
Unanticipated cost. 8, he says, outsource supply chain management. Now, we initially thought when we were reporting on Fisker that this was a smart move.
Yes.
Because you go to mature companies that have product that's already been tested and proven. Well, his take on that was Fisker Automotive had contract manufacturer Valmet, which managed inventory control and part ordering. Having $500 million in half the parts to make one additional car means that you can't build any more cars without substantial working capital. But contract manufacturers were ordering parts like they had blank checks.
Well, and I think there's a slight difference here between the contract they had with Magna and what they're talking about here. This is the guys that are supposed to manage the supply chain.
Right.
And they're just ordering parts for whatever. And so we're talking about with Magna, the actual manufacturing facility. Now, maybe they also outsourced their supply chain management again, and I think that would have been a huge mistake.
No, their funding evolution. He says, number 9, company goals were to go IPO or be acquired, initial public offering going public, to cash out early investors and pay C-suite and director salaries. There was never a realistic plan to produce profitable cars given the overexpenses, the overhead expenses.
Yeah, I wonder if that's what's been happening here with Fisker Automotive as well. We've been reporting as recently as last week on the talks that they had with a large automaker to be a white knight, as it were, to ride to the rescue, believing possibly that it was Nissan that was in with those talks. That was never officially confirmed. Those talks collapsed, and now Fisker's likely going to go bankrupt. Is this the same strategy all over again?
Interesting point. Yes. Number 10, he says, not keeping an eye on partner, supplier, risk, and strength. Apparently, a battery supplier that they were using, A123, went bankrupt and production had to stop. Startup companies need the right fit of partner. The world's largest car part maker might be too big and slow, while nimble startups might be undercapitalized and unable to deliver. So you've got to find a sweet spot in the middle there somewhere.
You do have to, and that's a hard one. I think of the Taiwanese barbecue manufacturer that made the Roadster battery pack shells. Okay. So how do you find the right people? That's a little bit of an art, I think.
Totally, yes. And it's oftentimes chance, and it works out or it doesn't. And there's an element of luck, I suppose.
Yeah.
Number 11, they say burn supplier relationships as unrealistic timelines led to disbelief in the company's future success. Credit tightened from a net 45 to collect in advance as bills went unpaid. And that's a traditional method of doing business. When you begin to stretch out your suppliers, they get nervous, they begin to pull back credit. Next thing you know, you're on COD.
Boy, are we talking about Fisker Automotive or Fisker Inc. on this one? That they absolutely repeated the mistake on this one.
They did. And then, of course, it creates a vicious cycle, increasing the need for working capital, and the eventual outcome most likely is going to be bankruptcy.
Yeah, and we think that's what's going to happen this time too.
Now, one of the reasons that we focused on this particular element or this article was that we are beginning to explore positioning ourselves, Gruber Motor Company, in a service delivery capability for a lot of these Fisker owners that at this point are going to not have any options here fairly shortly. And what we looked at was the process that we would follow here, which is initially becoming acquainted with the product, reverse engineering it, deciding whether we can make an impact, is virtually identical to what we did with the Tesla Roadster in 2014.
Right. And we've got, because ultimately you've got a customer base out there that has a vehicle that they would love to be able to drive. Even the YouTube review that said that the Fisker Ocean was the worst car in the world, he said there's a lot of good things about this. It just feels like it's not ready for prime time.
Yeah, well, and that's it exactly. It looks like the battery system made by Cattle is a solid product.
Yeah.
The drivetrain is a solid product. Where it starts to get murky is when you get into the firmware, the software, the security features, which are basically an unfinished design. So one of the strategies may be to eliminate and scale back the car so it doesn't have all the fancy features, but at least it's drivable.
Exactly. And so I'm sure we'll take a good, honest, fair look at that.
Highlander says, Sandy did an awesome podcast on Lightship, the RV manufacturer.
He did. I watched most of that podcast, and that was a very interesting deep dive. They didn't do a full teardown. They were out at a Lightship show, and they were given about a half-hour tour of it.
And it may not fit in his building. It's pretty big.
Yeah, it's pretty big.
YouTube, Richard Flentke says, flooded Fisker Karmas on Coparts for $125. They pay you $125 to take it, LOL.
Wow. Facebook, DJ Ice J Jacob says, good morning.
And then TikTok, Bfish62, money grab for the rich investors. There are a lot of accusations going around. People have lost money. The stock market is a gamble, but there have been a lot of injured parties in this Fisker debacle.
Yeah.
Highlander says, I'm sincere when I say this. I would not take a Fisker if you gave it to me for free, LOL. My brother and I have enough junk lying around. We don't need a Fisker. All right.
Oh, well, it looks like we're about at time. I know that we have the Roadster portion of the podcast coming up in about 5 minutes or so.
Right. And so join us if you like at 11 o'clock Mountain Standard Time. We'll continue with a different podcast, which is focusing on Tesla Roadster. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next week.
Take care.